Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fall Damage, a new show that I'm doing, starting here today with my friend Brandon from Blue and Red Games. We're going to be, in the series, going over a bunch of different games and developers of small, medium, large scale, and pretty much anybody that says yes to me at this rate. But today, I want to start out with somebody that I've been seeing a lot of their game, both on Twitter, or X, I guess you should say. And a game that I really enjoy is Ghost at Dawn, or at least what I've played of it so far. I'm really excited for more. But without further ado, or adieu, however you want to say it, let's pass it over to Brandon here for just a second. You can give a little bit of information about yourself and whatever background you'd like to give going into it, and we can start from there.
Sure. My name is Brandon Roberts. I'm the creator of Ghost at Dawn, solo dev for Blue and Red Games, just me. I only started game dev about, February 2022. So this is my first game, my first foray into making video games. It's been quite the journey. Very excited for the game to come out. And my background before game dev was I was a musician and artist in different capacities. So that's kind of where my experience lies. Yeah, it definitely helped making the game. Pretty much the thing I had to learn was coding. So, yeah.
Starting with that right off the bat, you said with the coding and starting just last year, it sounds right. You use nodes. Is that like with the is it the proper term for how?
I think so. So I don't know how to write in any coding language like C# or anything. I use Unity to make the game, and that has it's called Unity Visual Scripting, which I believe is similar to Unreal Engine blueprints.
Okay.
So you don't actually write the code; you just connect logic nodes in logical order.
Right. I've seen screenshots of it. It looks actually fairly it's very interesting the way it looks overall.
Yeah, it makes I'm a more visual person with an art background, so it just made a lot more sense for me to do it that way than writing instructions,
right.
In a programming language.
Have you ever do you play Skyrim at all? Have you ever played Skyrim?
Oh yeah. Okay. I played it when it first came out.
Yeah. Have you done any modding with like Vortex or anything like that?
Nope, no. I've never modded anything. I've never did any 3D modeling or any type of games work before I started working on Ghost at Dawn. Just a gamer. I was always just a fan.
That's fair. The only reason I bring it up is because in the mod manager Vortex for whatever it was previously called, you can, if you load mods in the wrong order, their dependencies will cycle or whatever, which I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that means overall, but basically they're pulling from the same assets. And the look of untangling those cycles, you can actually do it visually. It looks a lot like the nodes that you, from what I've seen anyway. I mean, obviously I haven't seen directly how yours looks or how any individual project looks, but the screenshots I see, very similar. But okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but it like I said, it's just it'll be a node and it says what it's doing, like the action it's doing and what object it's doing, and you just connect them, and an event will happen, and then it goes to what happens after that. Okay. So that's pretty much it. It's just triggers and then logic. That's all game dev is.
Right. It's pretty cool stuff. I went to school for electromechanical engineering, so I dealt a little bit with coding, obviously nothing to the degree of that. I basically got to machine learning and dropped out, and I was like, yeah, probably not for that. So COVID happened, and then I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go back to school. So that was the course of my education. But you answered the one question. This is your first game. You've not worked anywhere in the industry before or anything like that.
Nope.
But what was the final push to get you into game dev, out of curiosity? Was there a game that inspired you or anything along those lines?
not so much a game that got me into it. It was COVID. I got COVID very early in the pandemic, and I'm what's called a long hauler. If you're not familiar, it's a lot of people that get COVID. The virus will go away, but the symptoms will stay.
I still can't say straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have really bad fatigue.
Okay.
I couldn't do my previous work. I was a painter. I would paint cars or paint houses. Yeah. I would do murals and canvas work and digital work.
Okay.
Too. But my majority was doing physical things. I couldn't do it anymore because of the fatigue. Right. So it was just thinking what skills do I have and how can I make a new career where I can work from home, or if I get tired I can quit, or I can just sit comfortably, like I just work on my couch, hanging out with my dogs. Yeah, it's nice. So yeah, that was my thing, was like I need to make money, but I can't, and the U.S. government doesn't recognize long COVID as like something you can get disability for,
right?
Which sucks. So I have to make money. So that was definitely the kick in the butt. But as far as games go, the reason why I chose to do like an old school survival horror game is that I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I love the new games too.
Yeah.
But I also love the original style where it's got the fixed cams and you're just in the one location and you're trying to figure out the puzzle of, how to continue in the kind of Metroidvania style. And it didn't seem like no one was making that game anymore. So I'm like, well,
Capcom
if I'm going to make it, what was that?
Capcom isn't, that's for sure.
Yeah, Capcom's not. Yeah. There are more now. After I've seen more indie games. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. There's other games out here doing it too. So it just seemed like, okay, this seems like a good market. Like, I love these games. No one's doing it. I know there's a fan base that misses these old games.
Right.
So I'm like, let's go for that.
I mean, I found it eventually. That's one of those. I need to hear myself a little bit, or else I get like in a tunnel kind of. But that is what drew me to the game initially, was actually the fixed camera angles, those styles. Resident Evil 1 or HD, whatever you want to call it, the release on Steam is probably my favorite Resident Evil game overall.
It's a total masterpiece.
I've only played through it one time, but I just loved it so much compared to the others that I'm like, yeah, that's for sure. Like, that's just a great game. Jill Sandwich, everything you want to say about it, it's all there. But I really enjoyed that game, and I think you recently found out, I thought I saw on Twitter, where I haven't played Silent Hill.
And yeah.
I don't know. I know Pyramid Head. That's about all I know about that franchise. And even that, I don't even think that's everywhere. And
he's only in a few of them. I've played almost all of them, but he's not in every single one.
How many are there? Are there a lot of Silent Hill games?
There's 1 through 4, and then Homecoming, and then Downpour. So like 6 in the main line.
Gotcha.
And then there's some spin-offs.
Okay, all right.
And remakes.
That is a series I'd like to get into. I know there's the remake for 2 coming out.
Yeah, that looks cool.
Yeah, are you a Silent Hill 2? Like, is that your Silent Hill? If you're one, or
I wouldn't say I'm nowhere near as big of a Silent Hill fan as I am a Resident Evil fan. I've played every Resident Evil game like countless times. I replay them all the time. I do like the Silent Hill games. I played, like I said, most of them. I wouldn't say 2 is my favorite. It's very good. It's got near universal praise for a reason. It's a very good game.
Yeah. And
there's elements in it that I took inspiration from. There's actually a hotel segment in the game that was kind of a big inspiration for Ghost at Dawn. But yeah, I like 1's really good. 2, 1, 2, and 3 are just really good games.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people hate on Downpour. I really liked it. It was really scary. So. I don't have a clear favorite.
Outside looking in, I feel like the Resident Evil fan base as opposed to the Silent Hill one. I promise we won't stick on these two franchises. I'll move on.
Oh, hey, I don't mind. I'm a big fan. We can talk about it.
I feel like the Resident Evil fan base, there's like a clear divide in which like trilogy or maybe not trilogy, but era of games they like. And then Silent Hill fans, it feels like they're like, okay, I like this one, and then these ones, nah. That feels like the vibe I always get outside looking in.
Which is weird because they're a lot more similar to each other than the Resident Evil series is similar,
right?
To each other in the different eras.
Okay.
In my opinion, they're all you're like, yeah, this is a Silent Hill game, whereas Resident Evil 1 is very different from 4, and that's very different from 7.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. But focusing back on you for just a little bit, or most of this, I guess I should say, when you got into games, what was like your biggest misconception, going into game development? Like maybe what you thought was going to be easier, harder, anything like that when going into the journey, I should say.
That's kind of hard to say. I was pretty well aware that it was going to be very difficult. I would say like the coding still I underestimated, figuring out the logic. Here I'll say this. I didn't realize how often I'd make little tiny errors that would blow up. Like typos or just forget one little thing and it just ruins the game.
Right.
And like, if you're prone to making overlook mistakes, you just overlook a detail or something. I have ADHD, so I'm like fixing my ADHD bugs like constantly. So that's the one thing. Like you really have to pay attention to detail because if you miss a letter or anything, it could break the game.
Have you heard of the whole thing about aliens, colonial marines with the one line of code that was messed up for their AI for the longest time?
No, what's that?
So, have you played the game out of curiosity?
No.
Okay.
I played Alien Isolation. That game's great, but that's the only Alien game I played.
That's one of my favorite games, right there.
Yeah.
But in Aliens, Colonial Marines, basically when the game came out, and I don't think it ever got fixed, there was this whole ordeal about how the AI was too dumb, pretty much, and there was no challenge throughout any of it, and no matter what difficulty, they weren't, pathing at you correctly or doing anything right. Well, I guess it was a capitalization error. And one of the lines of they were tagged as alien or xenomorph or whatever, and somebody instead of doing the uppercase or lowercase of it, they did the opposite. And then it just completely messed, not so much to where it didn't work, but to where they weren't doing the optimal route towards you or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just completely ruining everything, but it was low enough to go under the radar for a release, and then it never got fixed by the time they lost the rights, to my knowledge. So,
wow.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Oh yeah, I find stuff. I think I just found something yesterday that has been in the game since day one. I'm like, oh, so that's why that happens sometimes, and it was just a typo, and it would work, 90% of the time, but there'd be an edge case where I'm like, wait, why is it doing this? Mm-hmm. And I could never figure out that one edge case, and I finally found it. I was like, oh, I made some stupid mistake.
Right.
Well,
you've got, it's a month and a half, 2 months?
Yeah. October 6th, whatever that is.
Not quite 2. So you've got a little bit of time before you're set up.
Yeah, it's mostly done. I spent every day polishing it just to make sure. I just wanted to be crisp, because I know what gamers hate when a game releases on launch day and it's buggy. So I've been putting in just ungodly hours to make sure that it's as smooth a ride as possible.
Well, from what I've played, I played both the demo on my PC the first time I played it, and then I played it this week on my Steam Deck. And both times it's played quite well. On Steam Deck it does very well. The only issue I had there was that it needed me to update the Proton for the pack, there was a new version of that I needed to push forward for the game to launch. So that was kind of weird, but I don't know what that was all about. But it worked once I got it going, and it never asked me again. So I was like, all right.
You said a Proton?
Yeah, Proton, I think, is what they call Steam's like proprietary, like not emulation, but their way of making sure everything will run on the Steam Deck. I think is how.
Okay.
But I needed to make sure that it was matching with your game. I'm not really sure. I don't know the specifics of it, but I just know it asked me one thing, and I was like, okay, and then it went right through. But otherwise, it ran great on the Steam Deck, and I never had.
That's good to hear. So. Yeah, I don't have a Steam Deck myself, so I haven't tested it.
Yes.
But I've had a few people say that it runs on the Steam Deck fine, so that's reassuring.
So, going on with the solo dev, I think that's the main thing that really interests me about a project like this. Is I feel like jumping in your first game, no previous experience. I think it's so interesting acting as a solo dev. Which aspect of game development is actually like the most, how do I want to say it? Well, definitely there's like the most difficult aspect. Like, is it sound? Is it the actual gameplay mechanics, technicals of it? Making sure it's going to run this way or that. And then also, what's the most engrossing? Like, what's been, like you said, you did music before as well. Was that just fun, just coming up with, a soundtrack and all that?
Yeah, doing the music was a lot of fun. That's something I'm very proud of in the game, and I hope stands out. Is I did all the music by myself, with the exception of one song in the very intro. It's an old song from the 30s that I put on the radio that when the character's driving to the hotel. Other than that, I did all the music myself. I mean, I love making music. I've been a musician my whole life, so that was very fun to try to keep it in like a 1940s style and make it sound old. And it was actually nice because I didn't want it to sound perfect. I wanted everything to sound like a distorted, like slightly distorted old vinyl recording that could have been made in that time. So that it actually made it easier I didn't have to make it perfect. I could have some flaws in it and give it some character. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, writing the story was a lot of fun. I never got too much into writing as a hobby, here and there, but I never published anything really. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun doing the whole story and the characters.
Bunch of fan fiction. I understand.
No, I've never written fan fiction. Wait, no, I haven't. Had to think about it.
Had to think about that.
Yeah, the story, I mean, everything about it has been super engrossing. Like, I love problem solving, so even the difficult parts are, like, super rewarding once you get past and figure it out,
I can see that.
The thing that I didn't know that I would love so much is voice acting. I did a couple of the characters in the game, their voices, and I'm like, this is so much fun. And I'm playing some of the real jerks in the game, and like just to do like an evil villain, and like it's a lot of fun. Let's see, and I had my friends do some of the other voice acting too, and that was fun to get to direct them. But pretty much the whole process has been like just the most enjoyable, rewarding thing I've ever done. Like, I just feel I've never, I mean, just to be honest, and this might sound sappy, like I've never felt more proud of any piece of art or song, that I've ever done before. I feel like, man, like, not to toot my own horn, but I'm like, I think this is pretty good. Like, this is coming together exactly how I wanted it to. Right. And so the whole thing has just been so much fun. The game design, that was a ton of fun. Like, that's the thing I think I focused most on was the Metroidvania of it, like unlocking things and going here to here. Like, do you have to do this, or what are your options after you get this item? That type of thing. That I think that's always overlooked. Not always overlooked. It's commonly overlooked in indie games, especially where they focus on art or they focus on graphics or like a physics gimmick. Sometimes the game level design, is not placed high enough. Where I think that's like almost that's like the main thing. It's a game, It's got to be fun to
Right.
look around and do it. Look around and solve the problems and figure out where you're going.
Right.
Like that's the fun. Um, Trying to think. Well, was there anything else in your question that I didn't touch on?
Well, just going off of what you said there, like the level design, readability of environments is like huge. It's something that like you wouldn't think about. Like I've been getting more into game reviews lately, and that's like I'm trying to think of what game that was. Oh wow, look at me, very very prepared. Um, Game Pass game came out on Xbox and PC, black and white side scroller. Samurai.
Trek to
Trek to Yomi, yes.
Yomi, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I played that. That was good.
You did play that. I liked it, but whenever it went to the 3D space, there were a few times where I found it like on a bigger screen further away from me. It was harder to parse some of where you could use like items or anything like that. And that was one of the instances where I was like, man, if there's anything that I could really shore up here, this would be it. Like that would be, if there was anything I could say, like, hey, that would be the thing that like to me took me out the most.
Yeah.
And, like that's just an example I have, but it's more of to bring to the point that anything, that seems small, it all adds up to like a pretty good experience, especially when they're done well. And I think that's your setting with the hotel and everything. I think that definitely has. From the demo, it seemed like there was going to be more, like the courtyard. I think was a location on the map or something, or the wall or whatever it was. Might have mentioned it, and I think that could be really cool. Obviously, I don't know. Hindsight's 2020. At some point, I'll look back at this and say,
you mean
yeah.
the gate in the courtyard?
Oh well, I'll be quiet.
In the demo, I just added a hedge maze like in The Shining.
Yes.
A little spoil. I've been advertising it on Twitter, so
Yeah.
like I added a hedge maze like The Shining in the courtyard because I just wanted to add like just a little extra to the game.
Yeah.
Like another area. So if you play the demo, there wasn't a gate there, but if you played a more recent version, there is now, and it's a whole area you can go through. There's a courtyard.
Gotcha.
Sorry, a hedge maze.
No, oh yeah. No, well, just the idea of like different environments like that, and then like the two in the demo, you have the two. I think it's whatever the rooms are, 104, or up to 104, and then the other one's up to whatever it was off the top of my head. I'm not, but those two hallways, they were different, but they had with the Metroidvania of finding the right key and then having your lights to go in through the dark room. It all played differently enough to where it felt different, even though they were. I mean, it's a hallway in a hotel. Like there's two of them. You think in real life they look the exact same. Well, they felt different. Yeah. Then you go past the window and you got the the shadow or whatever of the guy in the tree. I'm like, all right, time to leave, I guess. But
well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I because it's a hotel and the layout of at least the hallways and the guest rooms are very, boring. It's just a hallway and some rooms.
Right.
I wanted to make each room and hallway unique, so it wouldn't just be going into the same room. So no two rooms are alike. They all have different wallpaper and furniture and decorations and different scares and different items. And there's just I just didn't want it to be the same room constantly, So, yeah, and what you were saying about in Trek to Yomi, where you weren't sure what to do, that's such a fine line, and I'll admit that I've struggled on a couple things that like I've had playtesters tell me about, like, oh, that's not clear, you should make that more obvious, and sometimes I listen, I'm like, yeah, I can make it a little bit more obvious. But then sometimes I'm like, well, I don't want to hold your hand. I hate when games are just like, go here and do this. I'm like, I love the old Resident Evils where you just had to figure it out. You might, have to take a note or think about it or check a room again, and I just, I wanted to, the hotel, figuring out the hotel is like, that's the game. It's not killing ghosts. It's not, obviously you have your goal of searching for the girl, but the game is figuring, like, the hotel itself is a puzzle, and your goal is to find where the girl could be.
Right.
And so that was my main focus, was that the act of searching and exploring was fun, and you never knew what you were going to expect, room to room.
Right. And as to not like hold the player's hand, that line is like probably very similar to how you felt with game dev, where it's very satisfying to figure things out. It's the
Yeah,
same when the game doesn't tell you exactly what to do either. And obviously it's not what the late '90s anymore. So sure there can be more guidance, but it doesn't need to also completely tell you, hey, go here. Here's your little white waypoint above where you need to go.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
understand.
And I actually had to add more tutorials. Like, if you play the demo, the purple writing will appear 3D in
Yes,
space
yeah,
and give you some tutorials. Because games don't come with manuals anymore, so you have to
right.
kind of tell people how to play in the game, which is fine. There's not a ton of them, and they're not too handholdy. They're in the in the first, and it's room 102, in the first room that's dark, and you need a match to
Yes,
traverse.
yeah.
I had to spell it out like a bunch of different times in different ways.
And they're on
Like,
the
in the game,
boards,
there's
right?
the board that says "Don't enter the dark," and then you walk into the dark and it says "Don't go in the dark without a light."
Yeah.
And then if you go in the dark, it says "Don't let your fear overtake you." Because I actually, it was publishers I would send it to, and they would die in the dark. I'm like, it said, at first it just said open your inventory. Press this button, open your inventory, and then if you had gotten to that point, you likely have matches, and the matches say, oh, these could provide some light,
Yeah.
and like they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, I got to make it a little bit more obvious,
Right.
for for this part. I'm like, I thought it was obvious. You light a match and it lights the place up, but
I mean, I spent all I'd say matches, cigarettes. I'm going there, but I actually,
yeah,
from the things you've said, there's two pieces I want to jump off of with that, and I'll be mindful of your time for the most part here. But one of which was like the purple writing and how that fits into the overall styling of the game, but like between the setting and like the characters that I've been introduced to so far, what made you decide that post World War II setting, and then like also the anime inspired like looks of the characters? What got you there?
Well, I wore my Junji Ito shirt
Okay, yeah,
today. I'm just a big fan of Junji Ito and anime horror art. I think it's really cool.
okay,
I've always been an anime fan. I just like that art style. I'm just kind of drawn to it. So I think there's probably not much more than that why I chose anime. Well, okay, actually, I'll give you a little insight. At first, I planned to make the game a first-person, realistic-looking horror game.
okay.
But my first computer that I started on, I have a new one now, a new laptop now. My first laptop that I very started on, it was a potato. So I couldn't do Unreal Engine realistic graphics on it. I'm like,
Yeah,
all right, well, we're doing anime then, you know. Which I'm glad I did. I'm actually, because it stands out way more. There's
it
not very
does.
many
It does.
anime horror games. So in hindsight, I'm really glad that I went that way.
Absolutely.
Um, so that's why I went with anime. And then, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
You
Oh,
know,
why to choose post World War II?
yeah, that was the other thing that really stuck out to me, and like the juxtaposition, because there's a lot of. I feel like online, it's always like, you know, we drop bombs on Japan. Now look at their. I'm not saying that at all. Like
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
not, but like, just interesting that a lot of those go together. Rather interestingly, like the, anime popping up and like that type of Japanese culture, and then
yeah.
World War II, like that's like anti-Asian sentiment in America, like all of that. It's really interesting to push on, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So that's part of why I chose that, because I'm like, I'm doing anime so let's do some Japanese characters,
Yeah.
but let's do them Japanese American. And World War II is, I shouldn't say an interesting setting. It's a terrible set, or post World War II is a horrible setting for Japanese Americans because there was huge anti-Japanese discrimination post World War II. Right. But that makes for more interesting setting and stories. So that's I guess it just went from there. It was kind of just a natural growth. Like, all right, we're going to do anime, and I love detective noir stuff. That was my dog. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I love detective noir stuff. So, and that's always set in like the 30s and 40s. So it just kind of easily came together easily from there. I'm like, and then I could do a cool story about a girl's missing, but the cops don't care because they're white cops, and she's an immigrant and a Japanese one at that, and there's no documentation of her. So what are they going to do? They don't, who cares? So, and that then you can bring in a private detective that does care, and so I just wanted to have some cool, interesting juxtapositions. He's Japanese American. He actually fought in World War II for his adopted country. He's an American soldier. He fought against Nazis in Europe, and so when he came home, even though he fought for his country, he was still treated badly to the point where he even changed his name. His real name is Njito Ohara, and then he changes it to Ben O'Hara to kind of bypass, so he doesn't to fit in. He to whitewash himself essentially. Which these are all themes that I think are interesting and relevant today. When people, a lot of with what I guess political discourse is about. About fitting in and being your true self. So yeah, I mean that was kind of it. It gave me a complex hero in a interesting setting. Saving someone that no one else cares about, which really, it sticks with me, that she's not the princess. You're not a knight. You're not going to a castle to save her. You're not Mario saving Princess Peach. You're not even Leon saving the president's daughter.
Right.
You're a detective that is hated for who he is, saving a girl who literally no one cares about. That, and if you don't find her, no one's gonna.
Right.
So I find that a compelling story.
Yeah. But of the two things that I wanted to jump off with, the other bigger one that you mentioned was sending the game to publishers. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't need to know, obviously, specifics of how that works. That's you. I understand that. But, what is, like, the experience with that? Like, how does that work exactly?
Basically, you just send them an email, like a pitch. So you have to have, like, you put together a website, a demo, and a trailer, and then just load it with pictures and stories, and you just find the email for the publisher and be like, hey, would you be interested in publishing my game? And I've had a lot of talks with quite a few publishers, but ultimately I think the fact that I'm a first timer and that some of the other elements of the game too, like that, it's fixed cam, which is controversial now, and that kind of set people off. So I don't have a publisher. I still have some I'm kind of talking to, but it's getting to the point where I don't see the point of it anymore, to be honest with you. It's 2 months away, so I might as well just publish it myself at this point. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad process. It was actually an interesting process because I can just, get a view on what other people think the market is like, But ultimately, their companies laying their money on the line, so they want to make sure it's a safe bet. And Ghost of Dawn absolutely isn't a safe bet, and so I understand that it's a first timer making a retro throwback game in an art style that's not associated with that genre. Yeah. So it's definitely a crapshoot, and it's a Hail Mary, to an extent. I'm trying to stand out and it's some, that might put other people off by standing out.
The number one thing I always hear when dealing with publishers, especially as a smaller like situation, first time, the number one thing I recommend that you hold on to is whenever you get into a situation, make sure that this sounds like something you want to continue with this series. At least, that seems to be the case. I recommend holding on to your IP. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
well, that was the first thing. That was my first question with any publisher was like,
yeah.
I'm like IP stays with me, correct? And they're like, yeah. And that seems like what most indie publishers are doing. I didn't talk to a single one, and even some of them were, smaller labels under major labels.
Mm-hmm.
Like a smaller division of a big company,
Yeah.
and not one of them asked for the IP.
Well, that's
So
good. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really nice. And ideally, in a situation where Ghost at Dawn comes out, it's well received, and you proved yourself, if you will. Then ideally, maybe that's a situation where you can always return to those who were on the fence, and hopefully you can go from there if that's what you
Yeah.
want to. If that's what you want to do, you're the world.
If I prove myself, though, I probably won't need them.
Right, absolutely. Like, there's like there's many blades on this sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that could be. It's probably not a spoiler at this point since I've kind of talked about it, and it, it's even announced as soon as you beat the game that there's a sequel. I'm doing the second one like immediately. So whether it's a failure or not, because I have nothing better to do.
I love your outlook.
So I'm going to try to build on it, So my bar for success is low, So I don't have to sell X amount of numbers to make the sequel. I'm going to try to just build up on the people interested in it,
right,
and continue from there. So my goal is to make it an anthology series where the detective Ben O'Hara investigates a new place with new types of monsters or enemies. And I hope to do one every. My goal is to try to do one every October.
Every October. I mean, right in time for Spooky Month. I understand that. I like that. And is the plan to always do the fixed camera? Like, is that the idea to keep building on those mechanics every time?
I think so. Sometimes I think about it. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do the over the shoulder. But there's so many that are doing that, and there's not that many that are doing the fixed cam. So I'm like, well, that's kind of my thing, So, I'm not to say that I wouldn't change gameplay styles up,
right?
But I think I'm going to keep the fixed cam, iterate on that, make it better, make it more fun to control. Not that it's not fun to control, but like come with some ideas. Even in Ghost of Dawn, there's parts where it's not fixed cam, where the camera does go behind you,
right?
Or it just follows you for a while, So I play around with the camera a lot. Gotcha. So it's not just static cameras. Sometimes they turn, sometimes they just follow behind you, and in the hedge maze, it pans with you, and in the hedge maze, it literally just goes right behind you, like Resident Evil 4 or any other third person over the shoulder game. So I'll probably do more stuff like that where I just try to take it to the next level and always do fun cameras.
I mean, the prospect of keeping the relatively similar mechanics from at least game to sequel, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that would help with the every October thing.
Yeah,
that's remaking your movement system and camera system every time you do it either. So
exactly. That's part of is that I'm gonna reuse logic and stuff and everything I've learned and just make build on it, make it better as we go.
I think that's that's admirable. I mean, I like that idea. I think it helps, and it's logical. It makes sense. And I would really like to focus in on and at this point, I want you to hit me with the you don't need to know kind of information at this point. If you're not up for sharing that, and if not, that's totally fine. But I want to ask a few questions specifically about Ghost at Dawn. Okay, so do you have an idea of how long the game is?
Yeah,
And if you've
it's.
shared this, I missed it. That's completely
I'm
on
not
me.
sure if I shared it the exact length. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, of course, everybody's
Obviously,
different.
there's a range. Um, but it's. I try to make it about as long as like the first Resident Evil.
Okay.
Um, so my goal. Okay, so my favorite part in every Resident Evil game is the beginning part, where it's just the hotel or the police station,
Hmm.
and then you solve that one big puzzle, and then you go on, and then they have you go to the sewers of the lab or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like, nah, that part's not as fun. Like I've replayed Resident Evil 2 remake, I don't know how many times, and anytime like where I start to get to the sewers, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'll
yep,
just stop because it's fun, but it's like I feel like you played the game at that point.
yeah,
Like, so I wanted to do that. I didn't want to do a second location. I mean, there's more to the hotel than meets the eye, but it's just a hotel.
right.
It's all the floors in the hotel. Um, and I just wanted to do that. You figure this puzzle out. It's a concise, fun puzzle, not puzzle-ish indie game, and
Hmm.
that's it. So it's about 4 to 5 hours. It's not super long.
No, I mean that's
Um,
like the perfect length for, in my eyes, a horror game shouldn't not. I shouldn't say shouldn't, but that's 4 to 6 hours in my eyes is like the perfect horror game.
Yeah, me too. I'd rather have a really good experience that doesn't overstay its welcome,
Yeah.
that you can replay,
Hmm.
once in a while, than something that's just something that overstays its welcome and it's just a slog to get through.
Right.
Where, oh, do I really want to spend 20 hours, or
Yeah.
do I want to just play it for a while,
No, yeah, I get it completely. Actually, my biggest exemption to that is Alien Isolation. Only that's a pretty long game, all things considered.
Yeah, I
And
thought it ended like 5 times.
no, it does those false starts, and it's for me. It's just because I love the world of Alien. I love all of the corporation stuff. I love everything about that. I mean,
You
I've
got the
got the
face hugger.
yeah, I've got the ovomorph and everything. So, like, I love all of that stuff, and that's just one of my examples. I guess Evil Within's another one I really enjoy, but that's more actiony. But
Yeah,
it's got more pulls to other things than just the horror of it, so it's fine. But
yeah.
okay, so we've talked about publishers, we've talked about a lot of the solo dev stuff, and otherwise, do you okay? How's this? And this is the big one that I figured you'd hit me with. I don't know. Do you have a price plan for the game?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, so I'm. Yeah, I mean, I might as well share it. I don't mind. Um,
that's entirely up. Don't
it's-
feel pressure. If that's not now's not when you want to do that, that's fine. This isn't going to go up for a little while anyway, so
well, okay. So if this isn't going up for a little while, it's probably gonna be out by then.
okay.
So I'm actually waiting to hear back from Kickstarter. I'm trying to do a Kickstarter for it to help port it to consoles and to pay for translations. So I'm waiting here to be able to post my Kickstarter, which will have the prices on it. So any day now.
That was pretty much my final question was the idea of console ports. So
Yeah, no, I definitely want to. I'm a console gamer.
yeah,
I'm not a PC gamer, so my you know my goal from the start was to get it on consoles. But you have to. Unity doesn't let you do that for free. You have to pay to be able to do that.
interesting.
So yeah, so I have to get the money to pay for the Unity Pro license, and then I want to pay translators to get it in other languages. So that's
Gotcha.
why I'm doing Kickstarter. It's a very small Kickstarter because the game's done.
Right.
Yeah, I don't need the money to finish the game. The game's coming out 100% on October 6th for Windows and in English on Steam. So I just wanted to get some funds to try to get the consoles as close to October 6th as possible. I don't think I'm going to get them day and date with Steam, but
Right.
I'll try. Yeah, so It's going to be $29.99 full list price. The Kickstarter is going to be $20 to get, if you do the Kickstarter, and then there'll be sales and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, list price is $29.99.
I mean, outside looking in, of course, don't know the final product. That's pretty perfect pricing as far as the playtime, and then honestly, what to expect from the quality I've seen. That's accurate.
Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
I obviously wasn't going to charge, AAA price of
right.
50, 60, 70. But I think I try to put as much quality into the 4 or 5 hours as possible. So, I think 30 is a pretty fair price. That seems to be the going rate for well-made, longer indie games, anyway. So, and then, like I said, there'll be sales. So if that's too high for some people, just wait.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you mentioned, I want to say it was recently, was it 1.3K wish list so far on your way to 2,000, or is it 1.4?
Yeah, I'm at a little bit over 1,300.
Gotcha.
So I want to get to 2,000 by the end of the month. Probably won't happen. Maybe it'll blow up. Who knows? But yeah, because Steam starts pushing it. If you get
release.
okay.
You
need wish lists for Steam to start pushing it on Steam.
Right.
So I am getting some traction, I guess, from Twitter. More and more people are noticing it, and I'm having a lot of. This is Buffy, by the way. Yeah, she's named after the Vampire Slayer. So I'm starting to get more streamers and people on Twitter. To notice it, so that's good. It's been going. I can't complain about anything. It's been from starting from scratch. It's been going pretty well. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Obviously more wish lists would be good. If I had some more gimmicky gameplay gifts or something, maybe I can I can blow up. But
I tell you what, there was one scare in the demo that if you could encapsulate the minute before that in a perfect way, I think.
When she jumps out of the door in the hallway.
Oh yeah.
I put that in a minute trailer. Maybe I'll repost that then. Yeah. That scares the crap out of everybody.
Yeah. Well, I just wasn't quite expecting it, which that's the idea, I guess. So.
For people who don't like too many jump scares, don't worry. It's not too much, but there's a couple good ones in there.
Right.
It's not constant, but I want to hit you once in a while when you're not expecting it.
Yeah. Well, hey man, I've been satisfied. I feel like I've learned a little bit about the goings on a little bit, and then also we've got some information about the game that's very interesting. It's nice to meet you, by the way. I've not officially spoken to you before this today, and that's pretty cool. And otherwise, off the top of my head, questions: what's your social security number? And then get that figured out. We'll be right out of here. Yeah. The number's in the back, please. But really, that is all I had. This is something that if I continue doing this, if you ever want to be on again next year in September, come on again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to. I've got a few other tendrils out there. Little content creator tendrils where I'm trying to. I've got a few different people potentially lined up, but this isn't going to be like a regular thing. This is, I guess, also to the all-knowing viewer out there as well. But I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking time. I know it's Sunday. I don't know if I'm not a Lord's Day person, but for the Lord's people out there, thank you. And, I wish you luck with launch. I will, I actually plan on making a video very soon, kind of summing up everything and putting it out there. So I'll make sure to hit you with that. And until then,
awesome.
Goodbye, YouTube people. And,